People who let their mom count to 0. What happened after? Alright, I'm coming in late here, but this reminded me of the time I went the distance with my mom. My whole life, we've rarely argued, and during my entire upbringing, we only had a few actual fights, all of which were 100% my fault. The point I'm making is that my mom is a really sweet, genuine person who did an amazing job raising 2 boys all on her own. So when I was 12, I had a bad day and got home in a mood. I wasn't quite looking for a fight per se, but I was being a crabby, snappy, negative schmuck. Mom put up with it for a while and then had enough. I can't recall the catalyst, but she wanted me to do something and I refused, so the count came. 3, 2, and I interjected, 1, witch! There was a stunned silence for a moment, and then she looked at me with rage in her eyes. I'm sorry, I pleaded, but I had crossed the line and punishment was coming. She moved so fast, like a blur, and I was frozen. I was taller than her, but she scooped me up, thrust me in a chair, and told me to wait there. Her voice had both ice and heat. How's that even possible? She came back with a bar of ivory soap, which she jammed into my mouth. It was gross, with high notes of bitter soap taste, but also a strange, sickly sweetness that made me want to retch. And that's how I know that Dr. Pepper tastes like Robitussin with ivory soap, a splash of prune juice, and carbonated water. I think I got grounded as well, but the fear she instilled in me really did the trick. Wow, and cleaned his mouth well that the 1% of the bacteria was absolutely gone. Story 2. Short story time. Raised in an Asian household, near Tiger Mom, all that stuff. Can't even remember what it is exactly I did to set her off, but she turns on her usual rage face and starts staring me down. Next thing I know, she tells me to go to her room and grab her leather belt and that I have 5 seconds to get it or else bad things are gonna happen. And for the first time in my life, I decided to take a stand. First, I told her I didn't want to because I'll just get hurt, but the countdown continued. And by the time she reached 1, I laid down a flat and calm no. She tried to hide it, but I can tell she was absolutely stunned. You know that saying, I wasn't thinking that far ahead? If you were to translate that into a facial expression, then you'll get her face at that moment. After about another 5 seconds of silence, she just told me to go to my room. I learned 2 things that day. It might not always pay off, but it's always better to try and stand up for yourself. And lock your doors because the fight ain't ever over. She threw a flashbang into my room, then proceeded to hurt me. Did I mention she was in the military? Story 3. My grandma was the sweetest woman in the world until you did something stupid. We grew up in the South and she had this big weeping willow tree in the front yard. She would prolong the experience by making us, me and my 2 brothers, go pick our own weapons from the willow tree and clean the leaves off. She called them switches. Often she would have me go pick the switch from the tree instead of my brothers. I was the youngest. She passed away when I was only 6 or 7, and I didn't understand that longer willow vines equals more pain. So I'd pick the longest vines possible because I enjoyed the sound they made when I swung them through the air. She could use those willow vines off like a bullwhip. If any of us laughed at our brother getting it, she'd always say, I'll give you something to laugh about, and proceeded to alternate between us. We didn't find it funny anymore after that usually. Story 4. I grew up when taking the belt to their backside was considered acceptable as a method of disciplining unruly children. My mother is a tiny little woman who had a strong hand and raised us. Dad, for the most part, was always busy with work or with general house repairs, so he left correcting to Mom. One day when I was a teen, I did something stupid, and as was tradition, my mother would hurt me. This time it didn't hurt. Seeing that the desired effect did not occur, she hauled off and tried again. It still didn't hurt. She then switched tactics and started counting down from 5, demanding an apology for my stupidity. Just as a point of clarity, I was in the wrong and deserved some form of punishment. I decided to call her bluff and let her hit 0 just to see what the or else could possibly be. After all, I'd taken her best try to no effect, so in my teenage brain, I was effectively above the law. So when she hit 0 and I didn't apologize, she said the words that chilled my very soul. Wait till your father gets home. It was then that I discovered that they were 1 step ahead of me and were ready for my eventual rebellion. I can still remember it like it was yesterday. My father walked in the door with a smile on his face, and my mother immediately went to him and said, Do you know what your son did today? She told him in clear detail, without exaggeration, the events of the day. He took this in with a calm, cool look on his face and asked me if what she said was true. I never lied to the man ever, and I saw no reason to start then, so I confirmed her version of events. He asked me then if I understood what I had done was wrong and if I felt any remorse for my actions. I told him I understood, but I felt no remorse as my mother's punishment no longer had any sway over my actions. Without any anger, and without any further ado, he hauled off and harmed me once. He calmly walked over and asked me if I understood what had happened and if I had learned anything. It was the only time he had ever had to hurt me, and from that point on, I made sure I stopped doing stupid things. Story 5. I woke up in my bed partially confused as she entered my room and told me to get ready for school. It wasn't until history class that I realized all I was watching wasn't a coincidence. When Sally tripped, it was clear. I had lived this before, and even as I knew what had happened, I couldn't help but do the same thing over and over again. My day passed as the day before without a single change in it. Only I could be fully conscious and had a choice when I was back at the exact moment, with my mother angrily shouting that I had 5 seconds to get out of Fortnite and do my homework. Each second, I remember how people still believe in God and won't listen even to my most irrefutable arguments. The misery of math class wasting time in nonsense. I wouldn't use a cop, all those hurting I had to bear over the years, but you don't care even when hurting children is illegal. Tomorrow won't bring me any joy. I know there's nothing to long for, but this 360 non-scope I just landed, I could crave for it the rest of my life. Story 6. Nothing really. We were boarding a flight back home from a vacation, and my young cousin and her mom were heading back on the same flight. There were 6 of us all in all, and we had the entire aisle booked. Both rows of 3. My one brother was a mama's boy, so he wanted to sit next to my mom, but I wanted to sit next to my other brother on the other side of the aisle. So that would mean there'd be 1 seat left in each aisle. I was hoping my cousin and her mom would be okay being across the aisle from each other. But of course, the first thing my cousin says upon seeing the seating arrangement is, "Aw, we're going to be separated?" The clear resolution was for me to accept it and just sit next to my mom and other brother so my cousin and her mom could sit together beside my brother, who I wanted to sit next to. But I was stubborn and didn't want to sit next to my mom, so my mom did the whole, "You get over here, now, now." I've still, to this day, never seen that look on my mom's face again. She legit looked like a demon, I swear to God, lol. I didn't budge, so she did the whole, "I'm going to count to 0 and you better move it by then." She counted down and I didn't move, but at this point it was causing a commotion and everyone was looking at us, so I finally relented and moved. But I was mad, and to make it worse, the guy in front of me reclined his seat all the way, so I spent the entire flight angry and uncomfortable. Story 7. My mom was at the end of her nerves when I annoyed her while eating dinner. I was annoying her on purpose and didn't take her warning seriously. So she took her spoon, got a whole load of mashed potatoes, and catapulted it in supersonic speed towards me. I will never forget the sound when it hit the wall 30 centimeters next to my face. Also, will I never forget her desperate attempt to keep her serious, angry face after catapulting her kid with mashed potatoes. We both started to laugh with tears in our eyes, and I found it so hilarious. Now, being 27 and working as a kindergarten teacher, I'm pretty sure she did not only cry because it was funny. Kids can be exhausting. I also remember my father using his electro fingers when we were too slow to get ready. He came up with a crab-like walk, putting his arms in the air, forming little crab scissors with his hands and screaming, "Electro fingers," followed by a bzzz sound, like a current you see, and then running towards us with his weird little crab walk and crab scissor hands, bzzing. Oh, I remember the terror caused inside me and running away squealing. He rarely caught us and tickled us with his electro fingers, but just being chased like this, I still feel the adrenaline rush when I think about it now. It was very effective, though. Story 8. I know I'm going to be buried in the comments, but I am getting a good laugh out of this post, so I figured I'd share one about my great-grandma. I was around 10 or so. My brother was 7-ish, and great-grandma was close to 100. The woman lived to 104. And by this time in her life, her mind was slipping pretty badly, and she was living with my grandparents. We were there for summer. My brother and I were running around the house, and she was over it. From her chair, she hollered for us to stop and get over here. We walked up to her. "Yes, ma'am. Y'all boys take this and cut a switch from up front. No fooling around. Y'all come right back." She then pulled a folded weapon from her pocket weapon. I don't know how old that thing was, but even at my age back then, I knew it was made decades before I was. "Yes, ma'am." We went out and cut a shoot off of one of the crepe myrtles. If anyone knows about these trees, their shoots are strong, crazy flexible, and thin. I'm pretty sure that all the swishing sounds in old kung fu movies were made with these shoots. They do have the ability to harm you if in the proper hands. We cleaned the bumps and sprouts off the switch because who the hell wants to get whooped with a bumpy, rough switch? We then immediately went back inside. Y'all boys seen a pocket weapon around? In my mind, I was thinking, what? She just told us to take it and cut a switch. I was very confused. Little brother holding the switch and myself holding the weapon, I said, yes, ma'am, I've got it right here, and extended it to her. I was unaware at the time that she was losing her mind and her memories were all suffering together into one singular stream of time that had become her forever perpetual now. She took the weapon from me. Thank you for finding this for me, boys. Now y'all get that stick out of the house, and I don't want to see y'all till lunchtime. Y'all go play outside. Yes, ma'am. Love you, boys. Love you too, Great Grandma. As we ran out the door, swishing our new shoot swords, we shrugged off what had just happened and didn't think of it again for years after. And if you're enjoying the video and bringing back some of your own memories, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 9. Nah, it didn't really happen. I don't think the grown adult counting to 3 was considered very Australian in Australia. In my homeland, I guess parents actually used it as a last and not first resort. And every Aussie kid just knew this. It was done in the privacy of their own home, a warning that they are drawing on everything they have. Otherwise, child safety will get involved if they do ever hit 0. Single Aussie moms in the 90s be like, leans forward over the trolley and whispers menacingly in your ear, listen here, you little, don't make me take you out of this trolley. I swear to God, mate, you're skating on thin ice. I'll take you to that bathroom where nobody will see. Can't you see I'm buying dinner? Don't ask me for any more markers. Oi, greedy guts, you better put that cookie down before I get to this register. I'm going to leave you in the car next time we come to Woolies. Meanwhile, in the Australian summer, it's like 800 degrees. Now you're asked to sit on that bench out front or sit in the car if you're going to wing it. But Mommy, the seatbelts. I gave you the keys. You can open the doors or roll down the window. Now take off. Moused the word 1 as a pre-warning to the warning. And that went for any other little sibling that was nearby. Story 10. The only time I ever did was when I was 10, I think. I was considered a very smart and stellar kid to take care of, and my parents were super top-notch and loving. I almost never got in trouble for things relating to disobeying important rules or having extremely unwarranted outbursts, compared to my brother who got grounded every few days or so, and corporal punishment was not their thing. Usually when we get grounded, my parents take away something we like doing that errs on the side of potentially bad habits if done in excess. So usually video games and TV were first to go, and then playtime outside and sweet snacks. They've never had to take grounding any farther than that, for my brother and I behaved when we were super little, so it was a pretty set system. Anyways, I was going through a rough, emotional, existential thing again that I wasn't coping with properly because I was a kid. As recently, I went through a situation where I ended up feeling responsible for the death of a stray kitten. It wasn't actually my fault, but emotions. And I was not handling things very well. I pretty much shut down when I was upset, but once I did something to defy my parents in some non-specific way that I can't even remember. My parents did the whole countdown thing, and I just did not care that particular day. You see, the funny thing about me was, for maybe the entire preceding year plus, I'd taken to drawing and reading more than anything else. My parents knew this and had to adapt my grounding tiers to suit my interests. Where losing video games was devastating and therefore the first punishment, for my brother, it was tied for last with TV in regards to my interests. They would usually take away drawing and going outside when I got in trouble, then video games and TV. The thing is, I love reading more than anything else, but my parents could never go so far as to take it away, at least not for long, because it's reading. Reading is usually the only thing my brother can do when he's grounded, but he hated reading, so he would just sit around all sad and bored, but it was my main activity at the time. And they could not take it away as a punishment because that was literally one step away from not letting me do my homework, which I typically enjoyed. They counted down to 0 and nothing happened. I just stared at them for a bit and then walked away. I wasn't grounded from anything at all because my first huge act of unreasonable defiance came at a point in my childhood when reading was the only thing I cared about, and my parents thought it was stupid to take reading away as a punishment for more than a couple of hours. They short-circuited a little at how pointless punishment in general was for me, to be honest. I mean, I was a well-behaved kid 99% of the time, so they never had to think about it for too long. But there was a solid year where I never got in trouble, even if I was being a schmuck, because video games, TV, outside, snacks, etc. didn't mean anything to me. If I wanted to, I could have broken a window on purpose like my brother did once, and then played video games an hour later like nothing happened, because my parents would have had to take away reading instead of literally anything else to teach me a lesson. It's pretty funny to think about it now. His parents must have thought, how do you ground a kid who loves reading? Story 11. I've told this story to many people and it never goes old. I was in sixth grade and I wanted to play with my friends. Our friend group lived relatively close together and we lived in a very peaceful city with our school nearby. If anyone in the friend group was bored, they would go and call everyone one by one and go play at the school. So I was bored and went to get my friends. When I rang the bell on my friend's door, his older brother opened the door. 2 seconds later, I see my friend run out of the house and his mom behind him saying, "Come back here, you have chores to do." Apparently, he had the same idea as me. Then his mom goes on to say, 3, 2, 1, 0. And then she takes off her slipper and throws it. Now, at this point, my friend was at least 30 meters away and running. But somehow the slipper got in between his legs when he was running and he fell down. This gave enough time for his mom to go get my friend and go back inside. At this point, and my friend's brother are watching the whole thing speechless. After that day, I never let my mom count to 0 because I fear the consequences. Story 12. There were many times, but the one that sticks out the most I call the lasso moment. I don't remember exactly what I did, but I was maybe 10 or 11. She was angry and she'd say, "Go to your room now, or I'll go over there and grab you by the hair and pull you to your room." So that day she counted down and I didn't listen. Instead, I ran outside, scared. She chased me. I remember looking back and she had stopped at the hose. It was neatly tucked in one of those hose things that keep it wound up. I remember seeing her use all her strength to pull as much hose as she could in one fell swoop. I turned back around and maybe 3 more steps when that hose was suddenly wrapped around my legs and it made me fall into the grass. She had essentially lassoed me like I was some kind of runaway lamb. After that display of a superpower, I never let her count to 0 again. Story 13. In my house, we count up to 3. We also make it clear what's going to happen when we reach 3 and then we follow through with it. At 1, it's a warning that they need to be paying attention and better start doing whatever the thing they should be doing. At 2, they had better be in the process of doing whatever it is that they're supposed to be doing. Not just a minute, I'll go, but I'm going right now. See, look at me, I'm going. If they're doing the thing by 1 or 2, then we stop counting and everything moves on in life. And at 3, we step in with whatever we said would happen. So if they need to brush your teeth, it's like, I'm going to count to 3, then I'm going to brush them for you. And they aren't going to like it if I brush their teeth for them, but it'll get their teeth brushed. There is no 2.5 in my house. My partner did that exactly once, and I stepped in immediately with 3 because the kids could see that she wasn't going to follow through, but saw that I did. They know how to push boundaries and get away with things if they can. Kids are smart. We give them clear consequences and guidance, and they're good with that. Most of the time, we don't need to count anymore, and when we do, we rarely ever get all the way to 3. But if we do hit 3, we always follow through with whatever we say. And if any of these stories got to you, here's more for you because YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video, and thanks for hanging with me on this one.